We are here on a very, very special edition of Second Floor Sports. I'm Ben Carlton. You know Matthias Wildman, but we are joined by a third member of the podcast here this evening, recording this on a Monday night. The man needs no introduction, but in case you forgot, we've got the newest head coach of the Ithaca College Bombers, Mike Toerper, defensive coordinator from 2017 to 2019. Went to Holy Cross for a couple years. We'll talk about that. But as of February of this year, head coach Mike Toerper, welcome to the pod.
Hey, great to be with you boys. You know, we've had some great conversations in the past when I was at Ithaca before, and I'm so proud of both of you doing your thing in the real world and making a way for your both yourselves in the sports broadcasting industry. So I just can't wait to see what you guys are going to be doing 5 more years from now.
Well, let's start by jumping back quickly to your time with the Holy Cross Crusaders. I mean, we were talking a little bit about this before we got the official cameras rolling here, but you show up to Holy Cross and then bang, the pandemic starts. I'm sure you could talk for hours and hours, but the quick version.
I'll give you the Cliff Notes version.
The quick version.
Right. So it was really hard to leave Ithaca in the first place because I just love it here. I love the people that are drawn to this place. My wife, who was my fiance at the time, was an alum. And, we talked a lot about the opportunity to go out there at the Holy Cross with a guy who I respect a ton and Bob Chesney. And, truth be told, my wife wasn't really about it. She was like, no, life is good here. Like, let's just stay. And, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity to gain some knowledge to one of the best in the business, and Bob Chesney, a guy who I just admire, the way that he leads that program, the type of energy that he brings every day, the type of attention to detail that he has in his work and that he demands from the staff. It's like, I really went and got an MBA in coaching, going out there and coaching the safety. So it was an exciting opportunity for me, really bittersweet. I mean, it was an emotional day when we told the team that I was leaving, literally sat on Higgins Field and cried and hugged with those guys for an hour after the team workout. It was really, really tough. I came home and told her, like, hey, I might have made a mistake. But anyway, I go out there. She stays back. We got our lease running to June. So I'm like, we're going to go out to Worcester. I'm going to live in the GA house out there like I'm, a 20-something-year-old again. And, when the time's right, you'll come out. We'll move out. We'll live in Worcester together. So I go out there, we're finishing up winter conditioning and we're about to start spring practice. And then it all goes down, right? The NBA starts canceling games. And, I think I came back here for a weekend and I'm getting in the car to drive back to Worcester. And Coach Jesse calls me. He's like, you might want to stay there for a little bit. And so, long story short, we stay until the end of our lease and then we move out to Worcester. And, we just navigate the whole thing just like anybody else does, right? Our situation is just a little bit different than everybody else's, trying to get people back on campus, trying to get some workouts in the fall when only like 30 guys are around. And, the whole thing. I don't need to go through it. So then we get a chance to play a spring season, which is super cool because that'll never happen again, right? So what an awesome experience that was. Got to go play in the NCAA playoffs, went to South Dakota State. That was just cool, right? The fact that we were playing, nobody else was. And then we were able to win 2 Patriot League championships in the same year. What a blast. But it was a great experience. Like I said, got a chance to get to know some awesome coaches there on that Holy Cross staff. And then, just got a chance to work with some players that I'll have relationships with for the rest of my life. So, that all went down and then, this job opened up. So that's where we're at from there. I don't know if you guys want me to go into that part of it, but
Coach Toerper, you're still the king of transitions because that was literally the next question we were going to ask you. So obviously, it's probably not as smoothly as you would have liked for it to have gone those couple of years. And obviously I would imagine that the timing isn't exactly of when everything was announced. But you coached under Dan Swanstrom when you were at Ithaca as the defensive coordinator. Obviously anyone can look at the numbers and see how fantastic of a job it was that you did do on the South Hill. But Dan Swanstrom on January 24th announces that he's moving back to UPenn. And then on February 18th is when you were announced as the head coach. Just walk me through how that process worked, how quickly it went, and just how at first you heard about the opening and how quickly you said yes.
Well, listen, we had great players. That's why we were good. Right? I just try to get
humble as always.
Listen, but I'll tell you what, Dan called me and told me that he was taking the job at Penn. I heard some rumors about it. And knew that kind of is in the works a little bit. And I didn't think he was going, man, this is a great job. Why would you want to leave it like so quickly? And he'd done a great job here, but it was the right move for him at his moment in his career and for his family. And, I'm so excited for him to go down there and bring the Quakers back to Ivy League dominance. But for me, when he told me that, I was like, wow, okay. He's like, would you be interested? And I was like, yes, 100%, and went home and talked to my wife about it. And we were like, okay, let's kind of just go through the process. I'm going to, connect with Susan Bassett here soon, I'm sure. Whether she's going to reach out to me or I reach out to her. I think I sent her an email that night when Dan told me, and the process started rolling from there, and just went through the interview process like anybody else. Again, for me, I didn't want to treat it as if, I was definitely going to get the job, because I knew that there were some other great candidates. I mean, who wouldn't want this job, right? It's one of the best jobs in the country, regardless of division. So, you got to imagine there's some heavy hitters going after it. So I prepared super hard. You kind of like, I was like the last candidate on the totem pole, really, is the way I prepared. And, just it helped me collect my thoughts for becoming a head coach as well. It's something that I've been building on, for a while in my career. Like, if I was a head coach, how would I put my head coach book together? Or how would I, really want to run a program? So it really helped me. But when I got into this position, to be organized and structured of the way that I'd like to see the program operate. So went through it all, went down to New York City, got in front of 12 football alumni, and Susan, the New York Athletic Club. That was a pretty intense meeting. Had some guys that are pretty passionate, or I should say just ravenous about this place. And, they were telling me about the high expectations and how, 8-2 for them is not good enough. I was like, okay, what is this, Alabama? Like, what are we talking about? But no, it's good. I love the passion from our alumni and how they expect to be a national contender every single year. And I wouldn't want it any other way. And if we're not, then, the season isn't what we expect it to be. But that's not something that we're going to keep in our mind. We're just going to focus on one day at a time. I won't get into too much coach stuff.
Right. Stuff, you're in mid-season form already.
I know, man. We're getting ready, right? I got to get that talk ready. But, for our guys, they come to Ithaca because there are high expectations, right? And they want to hold themselves to a certain standard. So that's expected. So I go through that process. Then I come to campus, get a chance to reunite with some familiar faces on campus for the interview. Thought it went really well. And I'm driving back to New England the next day, and I get a call from Susan, and she says, hey, we want to offer you the job. And I'm like, great, let's go. Let's get it done. I'm in. I'm all in. She's like, okay. So how do you want to announce it to the team? I was like, well, it's kind of lame if we do it through Zoom. Like, everything's been through Zoom. Let's make it unique. And she's like, well, what do you think about coming back tomorrow? Yeah, I'll turn right.
So you're in the car in Massachusetts.
I'll turn this thing around right now. Let's go. So she's like, no, we got a women's basketball game tomorrow night. So why don't we do something where, I introduce you then, and you just pop up, and we have a team meeting before the game. They introduce the coach, and you walk through the door, and there we go. I got to campus. I went and met with the coaching staff, and then literally met with them for 5-10 minutes. Like, what's up, guys? Let's do this thing. Let's have some fun. Let's let it rip. I want this one to be one of the best places in the country to work. And then we went into the Hill Center, and, I literally walked through the Hill Center doors, and Susan's head poking out the window or out the door. And she's like, come on. I was like, what right now? Yeah. Okay. So, I walk up there, and, I walked through that door, and you guys saw the aftermath. So it was, that whole process was really cool. It helped me prepare for the job a lot. But it was even more exciting that moment to be with my guys again, man. Those guys that I knew when they were 16, 17 years old, we were recruiting them, and, now getting a chance to coach them in their juniors and senior years. It's a special.
Coaches across all levels, all sports, talk about getting buy-in from a team. For you to walk into the Hill Center, into the meeting room, having not seen these guys in 2 years, and I mean, the room just explodes. I got a little bit choked up. I know I'm not the only one. How satisfying and just how much of a relief was it to walk in and kind of immediately step right back into the Bomber community like that?
Yeah, look, I didn't think it was going to be so physical, right? It was cool. It was cool, but I expected nothing less really from those guys as far as an excitement level, because that's what we're about. And that's what they're about. They're about bringing it every day, whether it's a 6 a.m. lift or a practice or, game day's obvious. But, I think that buy-in that you talk about, there's very few times where there can be a seamless transition when someone outside of the program comes into the program as the new head coach, right? We kept everybody on staff. These guys, we didn't have to talk about blind faith because they know what I'm about. They saw what I'm about every single day, the consistency, just trying to be as authentic as I possibly can on a day-to-day basis and be whoever they need me to be on that day, right? I think that's something that, I did as a defensive coordinator. Now I just have to do it with the whole team, which is fun. Just some more administrative tasks that I'm not used to, that I got to navigate through, and being a dad in this whole thing too. Like that's all part of it. But, I think that buy-in thing is huge. And especially when those guys at the top buy in, because there were guys in that room that didn't know who I was, right? Or they heard about me or whatever. But they never was around me, right? We've never built relationships before, but to have the guys that were leading the charge that, were like, listen, let's just stay on track. And for the assistant coaches to do such a phenomenal job between that time when I arrived and when Coach Swanstrom left, Mike Hatcher being the interim head coach, like they just kept those guys fighting and just going one day at a time. And I think that's something that I can't thank those coaches enough for, because those guys came in and we just went. And it wasn't even like anything changed. Like, yeah, there was some extra juice added to it, but when we got locked back in and focused, then it was just on. And I think we carried that momentum all the way through the spring. And, that you get the little break in the action here in the summer, but we're about to ramp it up in about a week here. And I can't wait to see those guys again.
Well, we both want to ask you all about Cortica, but just before we get to that, I want to ask.
That's my first pitch. I'm done talking about it. Week 10, but I agreed to go on this podcast, so I guess I got to answer.
No, right? Believe me,
we'll get to it in a minute here.
You are going to have to answer for that first pitch. Don't worry. But what I wanted to ask, you mentioned kind of those administrative things. Things are a little different as a defensive coordinator, now as a head coach. This is your first crack as a head coach. You haven't coached really an offense per se since 2012 with Johns Hopkins. So just how different has the prep been compared to other seasons as it is now?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matthias. And I think really it's about making sure that I'm investing my time in the right places, right? There's so many things from a head coaching perspective that you've got to make sure you give your attention to, right? From recruiting standpoint, from a budgetary standpoint, right? From an administrative standpoint, working with the community on campus, being the face of the program, that whole part of it. And then offense, defense, special teams, right? I think that's something that, having had background in coaching offense, especially in coaching in Coach Swanstrom's system, Coach Reeder was an offensive lineman back in 2012 there at Johns Hopkins. So just a familiarity with that piece of it, working with the wide receivers and working with the strong safeties and, having been a special teams coordinator before, just all of that experience came rushing back to me, and just being able to add my 2 cents. And again, I told those coaches when I got there, I'm a plug and play guy. Like I got an offensive coordinator, I got a defensive coordinator. I'm going to work with the special teams this year. But wherever you guys need me to be, I'm going to be there for you. So I think that's just kind of the way I operate on a day-to-day basis. And, whether that's from a recruiting standpoint, from a football standpoint, or from, tomorrow morning, we're gonna go out there and water these practice fields because they need it, and that's fine with me. Like, I think that's the stuff that I love. Just even dumping my whole body and soul into this job, and just having a day-to-day basis where I'm bouncing around from so many different tasks and starting to be a dad, like I said, but it's just, you got to enjoy it. You got to take it, enjoy the journey, enjoy the struggle. And at some points, enjoy the misery.
Bouncing around is a good way to describe, how you operate as a coach, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I got to change that a little bit on game day, probably. I would still bring some juice, but, maybe cool it out on the chest bumps and whatnot.
So does that mean we won't see you go penguin diving into the mud like we saw against St. Lawrence anymore?
If we win in a mud bowl, I'm a mud slide. Until I can't slide physically anymore, I'm mud sliding in Butterfield if we win in a mud bowl.
So we do have to talk a little bit about Cortica, your time at Yankee Stadium. They don't just invite anybody out to throw a first pitch at Yankee Stadium. You get to go out there with Cortland head football coach who's also relatively new. Kurt Fitzgerald only started in 2020. Again, the quick version here. you walk onto the field at Yankee Stadium, you walk in front of the mound. What was that like for you?
Okay, let me just say this couple things. Right? Let me just so one, before that, right? The 15 minutes I got to spend on the field prior to the first pitch was probably the coolest part of the whole deal, because I'm out there, talking to, some of the Cortland people, some of the Ithaca people. Our president's out there. She's loving it. One of our favorite Orioles was there. Eddie Murray was there, in the front row. We were chatting it up with him. Somehow the head coach of Army and the head coach of Notre Dame are in town. So the Yankees have them down. So I'm down there, and I'm talking to the head coach of Army, Coach Monken, and I'm talking to the head coach of Notre Dame, and those guys are awesome. Like, just really, they're on the other side of the fence. Like, hey, great to meet you. I'm like, you got the coach of Army and Notre Dame. So that was a cool experience. Just being out there and feeling it from a ground level standpoint. And then listen, I worked with George Valiceni and David Valiceni the day before from the mound, man. And I was throwing nothing but strikes, and they take us out on the side, and I'm like, oh, like, it's kind of changes my whole approach. Right. So of course, like, for 2-3 weeks, Ithaca College is pumping it out on Twitter that I'm throwing out the first pitch. I wanted nothing to do with it because, listen, I'm somebody that wants everything to do about the team, nothing to do about me. But of course, I'm getting texts from everybody saying, don't bounce it. Everybody's throwing the 50-cent toss, the Fauci toss, somebody from Howard Stern bouncing and rolling it in there. Like, I'm like, okay, thanks guys. Thanks for all the support. Appreciate it. So I'm just thinking, don't bounce it in there. But, I was a little high and tight, brushed them off the play a little bit, but I'm just glad, no one's going to talk about it if it's a ball, but everybody will talk about it if it's rolled in there. So yeah. I'm happy we didn't bounce that thing.
That's true. It could have been a lot worse, I will say. It could have been a lot worse.
You got a generous umpire. That's a strike.
That's right. Yeah. No, I'm brushing them off the plate. That's the way I'm looking at it.
But not only that, then you get to go on Yes After and talk to Michael Kay. And I don't know if you guys beefed a little bit about him calling it the Cortica Cup after, but just how cool was that to be able to talk about it on a national stage?
Somebody that's legendary like Michael Kay, you just don't correct him, man. You call it the Cortica sandwich. I don't care. You go with it. But that was really cool. I think, Kurt and I, Fitzpatrick, the head coach of Cortland, kind of, throughout this whole thing, we went over there for a photo shoot in the spring, and coming back here, we developed a really good relationship. And I think him and I both kind of working off each other in that interview was really good for both of our schools, right? Anytime we get a chance to be on a stage like that, we got to represent our institutions well. And I think, we both did. It helped that it was 3 up, 3 down. So it was a concise interview. I didn't get a chance to rant, which is probably a good thing for the school. But it was really cool. It was great to be in that booth, and it was very impressive to watch Michael Kay do his thing, because that's a professional that's been doing it for a long time. And the way he's able to transition and switch gears like that, all of a sudden 2 D3 football coaches are in his booth, and he's just talking to us like he's known us for years. So I thought that was one of the most impressive parts about the whole experience. And then, we go back to a box, our alumni, our presidents, our donors, our athletic directors, like, everybody's in there. And it was just a really cool event for both schools leading up into November. And I think that's something that you just can't be understated, is that this is such a big, tangible event for both alumni to show up and just prove that we are the strongest institutions in the state of New York as far as just passion for their schools, right? Like, I don't know if Syracuse is putting that many people in the stands, and that no offense to them. I don't know if the University of Buffalo is putting that many people in the stands. No offense to them, but I just know that Ithaca and Cortland, they're serious about not just football, but being back together because they love their time together at the institution so much.
Now, we've got just a few more questions we want to get to before we set you loose here on a Monday night. A term that Matthias and I use quite frequently during our time broadcasting Ithaca football, a term that you use talking to us a lot during practice, the Mad Dog defense. Are the Mad Dogs back, or is that moniker a thing of the past? You got to come up with a new term now.
No, I think the Mad Dogs will always be a part of me if I'm coaching defense or a head coach somewhere. I think it's kind of got its own allure to it now. I went away for a couple of years, and Coach Warner kept it running, and which is cool to me, because it's something that, listen, a lot of people don't know the origin of it. It's like, when I was a young kid playing youth basketball, my dad was our coach, and we had this play we called ourselves the Mad Dogs. The name of our team was the Mad Dogs. And we were just like, we were a bunch of wild animals. And we were just literally like, we were 7 years old. My dad was like, the only thing we're going to do is win one game and have fun. We ended up winning them all because we had more fun than everybody else. But we would run around barking at people on the court, doing crazy things. So like, and ironically enough, when I got to Pitt, Paul Rhodes, who was the defensive coordinator at the time, called our defense the Mad Dog defense. I'm like, damn, this is like, there's something
Perfect.
about the Mad Dogs that just sticks with me. And we, I think we're going to play like a bunch of mad dogs on defense always. And I think those guys got to own it now. Obviously I'm not going to call us the Mad Dog offense because we got to be a little bit more poised in that offensive. But, it's definitely something that we're going to be training. We train like a bunch of mad dogs, and we're going to be playing on Saturdays like a bunch of mad dogs on that side of the ball for sure.
Well, I have a non-football question for you.
Yeah.
When you got back to Ithaca, or this is a 2-part question.
Yeah.
First, what was the thing you missed the most about being in the Ithaca area? And then second, what was your first meal when you got back?
So the thing that I missed the most about being in Ithaca,
You're not allowed to say your fiance now, wife.
No. But I can listen. My dog and I, when I was here before, we had this trail that we went on not every morning, but a decent amount of mornings over in Upper Buttermilk called the Bear Trail. And I did it again this morning, and I just missed that run with her so much when we were gone. And, now it's part of my morning routine. And I think that's something that, I miss some restaurants. I miss being out in the lake, all the waterfalls and stuff like that. But that, getting my mind right in the morning with the dog, running, a 1.25 miles through the woods. That's honestly what I missed a lot. And I was glad to be back at it. And we bought a house up here in the South Hills, so we're not too far down the road from it. And then what was the other question?
Just your first meal when you got back.
Oh, first meal.
Yeah. First restaurant or anything.
There's this Vietnamese place here called the Saigon Kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
And,
we know about it. We know about it.
That's our spot. And they only do takeout now, which is cool. Anyway, so because when a kid, you don't really get the chance to go out to dinner too much anyway. So we ordered a ton of food from there and then smashed it, and just it was good. It felt like we were back for sure. Yeah. We went down to the Commons and did our thing down there eventually, but Saigon Kitchen was like number one on the checklist.
Got to get there first.
No doubt.
Well, look, that's all we've got for you today, Coach Toerper. I mean, seriously, thank you so much for taking some time out. I'm sure you've got a ton going on between getting up to speed on your first crack as a head coach. We really, really appreciate you taking the time tonight. I appreciate you guys. And like I said in the beginning of this thing, I'm so proud. Like the way that we built a relationship during my time here as a DC, like you guys are like two of my players, right? And now like one of the coolest things about coaching is to see what our guys do after college and how their career grows. And now that I'm 36 years old, I've got a chance to do that at a couple different places. And you guys are no different. And I can't wait to see how you guys progress. And when you're on ESPN, I expect a call still to your podcast. All right. So just keep me in mind. You have a spot reserved forever. Promise you that. You got the direct line. As much as we love being your players, I promise you don't want to see either of us on your field. I promise. You should have seen our flag football team. It was hey, you guys are out there competing. That's all I care about. Exactly. Well, look, the Bombers open the season on the road at Bridgewater State September 3rd, and then the Butterfield debut, SUNY Brockport, September 10th. WICB, ICTV. You can catch them all right there. I had to plug the of course. Student media. Student media, baby. Coach Toerper, once again, we really appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Thanks, Terry.